get to your seats. We're going to start in about 30 seconds. 30 seconds, so.
I got it. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And by the way, when you mildly grumble, please know I would be doing the same thing if I were you, but anyhow. Pardon? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, good morning to you. We're going to jump in because I want to be able to get through what would be helpful, but I also don't want to keep you all day. Bless your hearts. You've got a lot going on. Everybody made some sacrifice to be here, and I want to be thoughtful of that. I don't want to embarrass anybody on this, and so there's no particular bite to it that I know of, but how many of you in this group are currently married? How many of you are married to the person beside you? No, I'm joking. How many of you are single in this room? Okay. How many are engaged in this room in the single? Okay. I will be talking only to you two, okay? Everyone else, this is not for you. I am talking to them. So. Okay. All right. Okay. Context. I'm Randy Gariss. I've spent 40 years with the privilege of being someone's minister or being on a team where my role was primarily the preaching. But the other part of that shocks me, and some of you know my backstory, but I don't know why marriages came to me, but I got them. I got them by the bushel basketful. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to spend the next 40 years of my life working with troubled marriages. I sympathize with Jonah. Which way is that ship to Tarshish? Because I don't know that I want to do troubled marriages. But I just got gazillions of them. We were a young congregation, and we were right next to a state college that had an awful lot of young adults. We were a larger congregation, and it just created a movement. What I'm going to do with you today didn't ever get designed as a lecture. It just came out of just meeting with people, just having conversations, just praying with people, chasing people down across town and going, please don't leave your husband and take your kids, or please don't leave your wife, or whatever the case may be. And it turned into a package that I sort of present. Now here's where, I actually have a package. It's kind of an organized whole deal. Not this morning. It would take too much time. And so I'm going to pick, for lack of a better term, big rocks. I'm going to grab some big rocks and set them out and say, these are the issues that matter. A great marriage is incredible. It is an absolute blessing. The scriptures would even describe a great marriage as a bit of a shadow of heaven. You want to know what heaven looks like? Go look at a great marriage. It's wonderful. But the truth is that most of our culture doesn't know what a great marriage is. Most of our culture either struggles with really bad marriages or tolerable marriages. Julie and I spent the last 9 years with college students. That's kind of been a niche of mine all along anyhow. I've been with college students, I think probably 55 or 60 different colleges that I've gone work with a campus ministry at some level. You talk to college students, what you get with regularity is, I do not want the home I came from. Dad was an elder in the church, mom was really active. They loved Jesus, but our home wasn't what I want. Or my parents don't love the Lord and I don't want that home. Just over and over and over again, those stories. Julie would tell you, my wife sitting up here beside me, she would say that one of the major conversations we had before every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every April or May with college students is, what can I do so I don't have to go home? I don't want to go home over Thanksgiving. It's not a fun place to be. I think the Lord weeps. So what can we do in an hour and a half or so? What can we do that would actually be helpful? I'm going to kind of look at your faces and sort of adjust this a little bit according to if you're awake or not. And I joke about this, but I spoke in Heavener, Oklahoma. I don't know why I'm putting this in. Many years ago. This is even on some of the online stuff some of you have seen. But there was a second grade teacher back there in the back that had a first grade daughter sitting next to her. And the first grade daughter kept trying to lay down in the worship service, and the second grade mom, second grade teacher mom would pull her back up, and the little girl would lay down, and the mom would pull her back up and lay back down. And finally, the mom said one of those whispers that you can hear across the entire room, "What do you think you're doing?" And the little girl said, "I'm trying to lay down and go to sleep." And everybody heard it in the room. The mom never missed a beat. She fired back, "Then you sit up and sleep like the rest of us do." And so I kind of will watch that a little bit as we're doing this today. Okay, so what do I believe, or what do I think I've seen? I believe there are probably six. I'm probably bouncing back on. I think it's probably my stand that's making it bounce back a little bit. I'm going to give you 6 big blocks that I think are like Lego blocks that you snap them together. And this is the home you want. The 6 big Lego blocks that I would give you, the 6 big rocks that are there would be this. Number 1 is that you cannot have the marriage you want. You cannot have the home you want to go back to. I don't care who you are. You can't have it unless you yourself chase after and make great progress on wholeness and your own personal maturity. You have to have individuals. We don't start talking about the marriage. There are no tricks to make a great marriage out of immature people. You cannot take people who've never grown up and say, if you'll just date more, if you'll just communicate more, if you'll just do this more, that'll fix everything. No, there are no tricks. The number 1 big rock is you require wholeness. The second big rock that I would go with, and you have to understand the purpose of marriage. You have to understand, what does marriage exist for? It's in our culture. We're so familiar with it. We just think it's normal. But do you know what it's for? You can use a screwdriver as a chisel, or you can use a chisel as a screwdriver, but it doesn't work real well. It'll frustrate the soup out of you. I've been many times under a car or somewhere, didn't have my hammer, but I have my long bar from the socket set. So I use the long bar as my hammer. Well, it doesn't work well. It always makes this thumb turn blue before I get done. It hurts, it bites, because I misused its purpose. Inside our churches, we have an awful lot of people who just absorb what the culture thinks the purpose of a marriage is, and it will frustrate the soup out of you because I think a marriage is for this. No, you don't understand why God designed it. You don't understand what it's for. It's like you've taken a chisel and trying to use it as a screwdriver. The third big rock is you have to comprehend how the human heart works. Julie and I are I wouldn't want us to be poster children for anything, but we have loved our marriage. Been married 49 years, and back in January, I guess it's still January, isn't it? So how does love have enough elasticity so that Julie could marry a 21-year-old kid with this type of personality I have, but then I'm a 35-year-old man and I'm nothing like that 21-year-old kid, and then I'm a 47-year-old man, and now she's married to an old man, and she stood there as a 20-year-old girl going, I want to love this man the rest of my... She's been married to 4 or 5 guys, and all of them me. And I've been married to more than one woman. How does love have enough elasticity so that you don't look up and say, well, he changed, she changed, we outgrew each other, I don't understand. How does the human heart work? So you have to have wholeness. You've got to understand the purpose of marriage. You've got to understand what causes the human heart to tick. How does it grow more in love as the years go by and not just paper cut by all the little repetitive things that occur? Number 4, you have to be skilled at verbal problem solving. If you've never, all of us, people waited for us to learn how to talk. And the Lord's still waiting for most of us to learn how to talk right. And everybody, we said this last night, in fact, I said it over here, or yesterday sometime, but everybody came from a culture, a home, your first home, that had a culture for how you verbally problem solve things. My family wouldn't have been that different. My mom avoided problems. If something came up, Mom would just begin to hum and walk away. My dad attacked problems by frustration and exploding. And I love them both. My goodness, dear people. Dad was a terrible problem solver, verbal problem solver. So was Mom. They just went to opposite ends of the teeter-totter. Mom avoided it, Dad exploded. I don't know what you came from, but here's what I do know. Whatever culture you came from, Christ's culture supersedes every other culture. And so what is Christ's culture for how you verbally problem solve stuff? And if you don't know how to verbally problem solve, you're going to struggle. Book of Proverbs says that it's a foolish man or a foolish woman who will tear down her own house with her own words. But that's what we do. And then we say all kinds of asinine things like, hey, I didn't mean what I said. Well, I'm perfectly happy with the repentance or apology, but you don't get to do that. You don't get to throw a stick of dynamite into a conversation and then pretend like the stick of dynamite never occurred. You also don't get to avoid everything and then act like you're the peacemaker. No, you're not. You're a terrorist. Terrorists hide pipe bombs that go off later. And people who avoid things are practical terrorists. You call it peacemaking. It's not peacemaking. It's avoidance. I don't know about you, but taking something that has a stench to it and hiding it in the closet normally didn't help the house. Time doesn't improve it. So you have to be a good verbal problem solver. Number 5, and I don't make this super complex. These are very simple. And if you had the full presentation, I think you'd feel better about this as opposed to, me just throwing it out here. But number 5, I think, I'm talking to a Christian audience, you have to know how to create a spiritual home. Most homes are just, whether we like it or not, are homes with 2 Christians in it. And they love Jesus, they're going to go to heaven, but it's not really a spiritual home. It's a house that we didn't know how to make it a spiritual home. And so that one would be. So if we were doing the full presentation, we'd be trying to cover all of these things. And then number 6, you need wisdom, because there are certain things just have a tension to them naturally. They just do. Doesn't mean they're bad. They just come with a natural tension. There are 3 natural traps that you can pretty well guess. I have no idea how many cars are out of alignment here in Muncie. The tires are out of alignment. but they've hit the same 8 or 9 potholes all over town. And so everybody's hit the same pothole. There are 3 basic tensions that you have to learn to navigate in some wise ways. By the way, goes back. If you don't have wholeness, you can't navigate these tensions. Tension number 1, and I don't know, there's no particular order, but tension 1 would be finances. It's just not easy. Everybody's wired a little different, and finances. Number 2 is how do we navigate some of the complexities from our original family? In-laws, parents, siblings. I come from a farm family. My sister lives about 3/4 of a mile from where my parents lived. My brother, who runs the farm operation, lives 1.5 to 2 miles away. My other brother he's way out there. He's like 6 miles. And then I'm the black sheep of the family that went 45 minutes away. Watching those dynamics play out, they're universal. What do we do with your mom? Because your mom isn't always easy to handle. Don't point. What do we do with things? Finances, in-laws, and sexual adjustment. If you don't understand how sex is even designed within a marriage, it's going to be a tension. And even if you do understand it, you've got to work through sexual tension, because there are no couples on the face of the earth that are exactly wired with the exact same metabolism and the exact sense of this how sex should be in our marriage. No, you married 2 different species, male and female. They're just different. And I don't want to create stereotypes, because there's too much variety within it. And I know way more about people's sexual lives than I ever wanted. My mom said I didn't have to know those things, but here's what I know. God hasn't made one sexually compatible couple on the face of the earth. The question is, can you learn to love somebody different than yourself? Can you learn to take good care of yourself? I joke about it, but honestly, many people, they know that the 2 shall become one. The question is, which one? And the answer is no, we don't do it that way. We're 2 people trying to outdo each other in taking good care of someone different than me. Those are the 6 big rocks. I'm going to hit some of them today. Again, I don't know how much. I got up early this morning and tried to think what not to include, how not to. If you want a little more, it doesn't have all of it, but if you want a little more of an organized presentation, you can go to YouTube, look up my last name. It'll be on something, Lifetime Love or Married and in Love. There's a couple of different versions that are out there, but I'll go from there. And some of you, bless your hearts, you know this material, you've taught it to other people. You could probably mouth the words with me today, so I feel bad for some of you on that. So what is the problem? Let's start back on wholeness. We're starting on rock number 1. The thing let's just do it this way. Everybody is born with the instinctive desire to love and be loved. Absolutely instinctive. Same way, I'm fascinated that a bird knows to attempt to fly. Who taught it? Who trained it? Who lectured it? I'm fascinated. Some of you heard me use this illustration, but I grew up on a cow-calf operation, a ranch. And you watch that calf hit the ground, and that calf has never had one taste of milk. Nobody's lectured that calf and said, hey, your mama has an udder, and you need to find that milk. And that calf hits the ground. It has 4 little sticks that we call legs, and it stands, and it's shaky as all get out, and that little heifer, little bull calf, will take its forehead and begin to just push on the mom, and it's looking for an udder, and will find an udder, and life occurs. You go, whoa, God, what kind of instincts did you put? Everybody here, but all all the scoundrels of life too, and I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek. Saint or scoundrel, you were born with the instinctive desire to love and be loved. So, therefore, it shouldn't be a problem. All you got to do is start dating. You have the instinctive desire to love and be loved. All you have to do is find somebody and just love them, and it's instinctive, right? No, it doesn't work that way. Why? Because while the desire to love is instinctive, the ability to love is not. It's a little bit of a too thin of a metaphor, but it's still true. You sort of reach into your heart for the desire to love. But the ability to love, you have to reach into your backbone. You have to pull out character. Love makes requirements of you. Love makes demands of you. You have to be patient when you didn't want to be patient. You have to be courageous and have a conversation when you didn't want to have a conversation. You have to be self-controlled when you have the conversation, so I'm taking good care of you and not just of me. You have to learn to hush and not let everything bother you and not be controlling. You've got to learn to invest in things that aren't important to me, but it's important to you. And so because you're important to me, I will make it important to me. It makes demands on you. But if you've never come to enough wholeness, if you've never been repaired enough by Christ yourself, you will find someone that you desperately want to love and you want them to love you. But when you reach into your backbone to pull it out, you come out empty-handed. Again, I don't know whose stories I'm telling, but I know I'm not wrong when I say your dad wanted to love you. I know he did. I've done enough counseling with people I've met enough. Your dad wanted to love you. I say your dad cried on a pillow at your house when you were little. Why is this thing not working? Your dad pounded the steering wheel of the F-150 pickup when he got it in the morning, some mornings. Why in the world doesn't this work? Your dad wanted to love you. But when your dad reached into his backbone and for the character that was required to love you or your mom or your sibling or whatever, your dad kept coming out empty-handed. And at first, clearly he blamed himself internally. He may not have said it out loud. But you can only blame yourself so long before you have to make a switch. So either I've got to go get repaired somewhere so I can actually do this, or you move to blame. If you just walked across the floor different, if you just shut up for a while, if you just say something, if you just weren't so loud, if you just were quiet, if you were this, if you were just that, and so you grew up as a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, thinking your dad didn't like you. Truth is, it's just the consequence of dad. Well, I wish he would have just tried. If he would have just tried. Don't misunderstand me. Trying is good. Sure beats not trying. But trying's not sufficient. I joke about it, but look at me. Would anybody confuse me for a runner? Okay? So if you came to me and said, hey, Randy, we could give me some great motivation. Randy, we could have world peace today if you'd go run a marathon this afternoon, 26.2 miles, run every single step. No matter how hard I try, do you think I can run 26.2 miles every step I ran? You can't try to a marathon, you train to a marathon. You give me 7 months, you give me 8 months, you give me 10 months, I can train to it, but I can't try to it. Similar kind of light joke. One of you comes up to me and says, hey, I got this, brain cyst, and they say it needs to be cut out, and I kind of like you. Would you do my brain surgery? Well, I'll try. No, I used to joke and say, give me 11 years and I can do it. Let me train to it. Give me 11 years and I'm well into my 80s. I don't think I probably can say that anymore. Here's our number one problem. We have people who really want instinctively to be in a great marriage, but they've never trained to it. God put a season of intentional singleness that our culture doesn't know how to handle well. There's a season of intentional singleness that's designed so that I can learn to come to wholeness. It's almost like the Lord turns to you as a single and says, come on, Frodo, we got a journey to take. And I need you not to cut that journey short, but because you're going to have a wife or a husband someday who's going to need you to take this journey to wholeness. You're going to have a 12-year-old who needs you to take this journey to wholeness. And we're in a culture that we cut that short. In fact, we deliberately cut that short. Mamas put dance parties together for 6th grade kids, and sophomore in high school who are dating one another, and in college, and on it goes. Because the pain in the human heart is I just want to be loved. I just want to love somebody. Do you understand how to chase after wholeness? Proverbs 25:28 is such a powerful passage to me. It's a passage that says that a man, this would be true for a woman as well, but a man without discipline. And it isn't talking about the kind of discipline that sends you to the gym every single day. It's closer to the word wisdom. But a man without discipline is like a city without walls. I want you to picture two cities, one city with walls and one city without walls. Again, this is more of an Old Testament image. In both cities, the city with walls and the city without walls, they want the same things. They tuck their little 5-year-olds into bed at night and kiss them on the forehead and say, I'll see you in the morning, none. Old men and women sit on a porch or go for a walk. They play t-ball in the backyard. City with walls, city without walls. They want the same thing. In both cities, they store the winter wheat away so we can plant it in the spring. But come spring, the city without walls, it's all gone. Raiders have carried off kids. Thieves have taken the winter wheat. Robbers have killed the old man, and so the woman and the old man don't walk together. Why? Because there were no walls. So what's he mean? It means that no matter how much I may love Julie, but if I make promises and vows to Julie that you can walk with me and let's raise our kids together, let's do life together, but I don't ever come to wholeness, then I'm asking her to come live in a city without walls. I'm asking her to make pledges to be with me, but I'm not prepared for the protection. And by the way, the same thing would be true for Julie the other direction. I have no idea how many thousand couples I've met with. Julie and I every now and then kind of debate on how many numbers, because most years it was in ministry, it's been about 100 new couples every year that were in a problem marriage, about one a week, or about 2 a week, I mean. But here's what I can tell you, very few couples actually have marriage problems. What they actually have are individuals who are having personal problems. They're tearing up the marriage. Because I come from a farm background and ranch background and those sort of things, if a motor has a minor problem, you just take a screwdriver, an Allen wrench, and you adjust the motor where it is. But if the problem's actually real, you don't fix it with just a little screwdriver twist, or you actually kind of have to take it, tear it apart, put it on the bench, and fix the part, because the part is broken, and until we fix the part, you can't do something trivial on the outside. So the first big rock that you're dealing with always on marriages is stop blaming the marriage when there's actually a lack of wholeness. Now, some of you would go, well, Randy, you talked about a season of singleness. It's a little late for us. We've been married, 13 years, 7 years. Do we go back to the singleness? Oh, no. No, I'm not recommending that. what I'm going to tell you is you've got to own your own maturity in this marriage. And it's time to stop paper cutting one another with some sense of blame or rolling the eyes. You've got to own what it is. I love 1 Thessalonians 5. It's become such a key passage for me through the years. 1 Thessalonians 5, 23 and 24. Is there real transformation? Oh, yeah. 1 Thessalonians 5 says, Himself, God Himself, the God of peace, may He sanctify you through and through. May your whole spirit, soul, and body be found sound and blameless at the coming of the Lord Jesus. And the one who promised you is faithful. He will do it. What's that passage about? Well, he went into Thessalonica to people who were not mature, not whole, and here's his point. You have a faithful God who will bring you to that. My parents ended up with a great marriage. Incredible marriage. Dad died I think at 92. Mom was about that same age. A couple of years later when she passed away. I'm the oldest, so I got to watch this play out. My dad and I are walking across the yard. Julie and I are married. We got a couple of little kids. So this is a 40-year-old story. But we're walking across the yard, and my dad is a John Wayne kind of guy. And I commented on a tree. I said, man, that tree's big. I said, I remember the day Dad and I planted that tree. And I just commented on the tree. And my dad never missed a beat. He said, I hate that tree. Okay, that's not my dad. I mean, I don't know what this is about. We walked from halfway, maybe even more than that, to the back of the room. And my dad said to me, probably about as transparent as my dad ever spoke to me. He said, the day we planted that tree, I was trying to decide whether to leave your mom or not. But I watched my dad's transition and my dad's transformation. Maturity can happen in the marriage. In fact, if you have two humble people, you'll actually help each other to it. Now, you can't do it for the other one, but it can actually happen. If you want a home that's joyful, grow up. This is Julie's line. But Julie said, there's a reason we don't let 9-year-olds get married. Because there's stuff that has to be firmed up on the inside. Number one problem, bar none, is a lack of maturity. So this very seminar that we're doing on how to walk with the Spirit and be led by the Spirit and keep in step with the Spirit and all the things we're doing, quite frankly, is a part of this process. If you want to know how to grow up, and that's a whole nother, I mean, I'd love to take 30 minutes to 45 minutes and talk about that. But let me just pitch out a couple, 3 things. Number one is massive humility. Arrogant people never grow up. Humble people do. For what it's worth, there's 2 kinds of arrogance. You're going to get more farm stories than you want, bless your hearts. When I preached at College Heights through the years, if I left my notes back there in the back somewhere, laying on the front row, fellow staff members were so kind. They would take my notes for my sermon, and I would find written in great big red, pig story. They have no idea what it is. They just inserted it because they knew there were going to be one somewhere. They would insert just playing around, you know, story of stuck tractor. Okay, I don't have well, I do have, but anyhow, but they would just stick them in. So I know I put too many farm stories on these sort of things in there, and I distracted myself and don't even know what I was getting ready to tell you. But it's a farm story. So there you go. The issue of growing up, oh, I know. I know where I was headed with it. You have to have massive humility. The second thing that I would tell you is you have to upgrade, and I mean that a little tongue-in-cheek, you've got to upgrade your friendships to wise friends. And the way you do that is you end up, and it takes an awful lot of humility, but you end up walking to a man or a woman who you admire their maturity. I'm not necessarily visibility, not automatically somebody who's up front, but somebody, and you say, you know what, I've always admired your life, but I have some unfinished business in my life, and I would love to spend some time with you because I think there's some wisdom and wholeness that's going to have to be coached in my life. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm going to need. And friendships that are transparent on those issues and actually become friendships. I can't tell you anybody who really grew up, who went off to a monastery by themselves and came back and went, wow, I'm all grown up now. You're going to meet with the Lord in great humility. You're going to ask the Lord. But the Lord's answer to you is going to be other people. I'll stop at that just for time. Those of you that have never heard me speak before, I joke about it, but I'm not very good, but I always try to go long to make up for it. And so I look at my watch to see how far we're going in this thing. I may stop there on number one. Does that first big rock make sense? Julie, anything off that first one we ought to do? Okay. Oh, I did. I'm going to leave you two. I will leave you because to explain it, I got to go further. So it's. I actually have a series out there that some of you have seen, and it contains some of it, but it's emotional maturity. That's also on YouTube. It's there. C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis said anybody who would speak of friendship begins a rehabilitation journey. Dietrich Bonhoeffer talked about the culture, and he's talking about Germany in the 1930s, but it's exactly us as well. He said, we teach people how to stand in front of somebody and lead. We teach them how to kneel in front of somebody and serve. But we don't know how to stand beside someone and befriend. And we are unrepaired, and there's no one to tell us. Friendships, what I would probably develop more of if I were going to go further on this one. Second big rock. And I don't know how much time to spend on it, but I'll go just a little bit. I won't do tons on it. You have to know the purpose of marriage. What is a marriage supposed to be? There are some myths out there. There's a myth that if you cross your eyes, they'll stay stuck. And so don't cross your eyes. There are myths of all kinds about how to get rid of colds or flus. Do you starve a fever? What do you do with a fever? And do you feed a fever, starve a cold? How do you do this? I mean, there's all kinds of things that are myths that are out there. They're tales that we pass around. And here's another one. That God designed marriage to make you happy. That is a massive myth. If you believe that myth, that God designed marriage to make you happy, then you're going to look up in your own marriage and going to go, well, this is the marriage that's not right for me. Or you're going to look up and say, I'm married to the wrong person then, because this marriage is not meeting what it was supposed to do. For what it's worth, if you believe that, you are also a part of the Flat Earth Society, because it is a mythology. That is not why marriage was created. I think you're going to find marriage really hard if you don't know what it's for. It may sound crazy when you say that, because all the movies, every Disney movie basically is a marriage seminar that designs that you need to look around, even if you're in the water, look out of the water until you find the face out of the water, and so you can marry that person so that you and Ariel can be happy, because the face out of the water will make you happy. Or if you're in some tangled relationship up in the top of a tower and having mama issues, there'll be some Flynn or somebody along the line who will rescue you and make you happy. I mean, it's just, that's what it's, I mean, they're all that way. If he's the beast of the school, if you'll just dance with him long enough, the beast of the school will eventually become a handsome prince and all is wonderful and you will be happy and you don't have to marry Antlers guy. And I mean, all of the Disney movies are all design destruction. They just are. All of the love songs. February 14th is coming up. All the radio stations will flip to the great love songs. And the love songs are wonderful. Except, there's a funny little stat. Where I actually first did my own count on this, when I first did, I've done different versions of the marriage stuff, but I would live in Joplin. Fort Smith, Arkansas is a couple of hours away, and a company, well, actually it was CIY, but CIY wanted me to go down and film some of this at Fort Smith, Arkansas. And so I drove 2 hours in icy snow, so it took about 3.5 hours. It was a pretty rugged morning to get down there. Well, it's just before Valentine's, and we had the satellite service on that car that came when we bought it, and at that time, we don't have it now, but it had the Love channel. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to love songs on the way down. That'll get me ready to record this thing, okay? So I've got satellite on, and so, you know, Celine Dion, and everybody else is singing, okay? I kept a tally beside me. There were more pain songs and leaving songs and breakup songs and hurt songs, this is prior to Valentine's Day, than there are the long-term wonderful love forever. Why? Well, if I go back, I can actually quote you, because all of the artists who sing concerts say, because the pain is more believable to the people in the audience than the hope of the others. So they sing. If you go to a concert, I have not been a Swiftie, but my guess is that if you listen to Taylor, you've got more painful men songs than you have wonderful men songs. Why? Because that's our experience. That's our experience. It doesn't work. I can't tell you how many people I met with that would go, I'm just not happy in my marriage. I'm just not happy. How'd you get in the affair? Well, I didn't set out to have an affair, but he was just so refreshing to visit with at work, and I just needed that, and so you go, well, wait a second, I remember your wedding, and your wedding was wonderful, and the vows. Do you know what cut flowers are? They are temporary. Why? Because they've been cut off from the root. I'm not trying to tell you that marriage will not make you happy, but it's not the road you come on. It is the fruit that's produced from something else. There's a difference between a set of cut flowers and a potted plant. Potted plant will bloom because it has roots. God's purpose is very clear. Let me just take you in your mind's eye. In fact, if you got your Bible, turn to it. Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians 5. In Ephesians 5, it's a wonderful chapter. The chapter is about dearly beloved children of God. I mean, that's where the chapter starts. Chapter 5 moves into follow his example, walk as he walked. It's a call to discipleship. Chapter 5 is don't be foolish. Understand what the will of the Lord is. You be filled with his Spirit. It's a discipleship chapter. And in the middle of a discipleship chapter of imitating God, marriage pops up. He hasn't changed subjects. He begins to get into marriage. And he gives a vision for marriage in Ephesians 5 that is both shocking and crystal clear. And he's saying in chapter 5, when you get married, the purpose of marriage is not social status. The purpose of marriage is not financial stability. The purpose of marriage is not to end loneliness. The purpose of marriage is not to satisfy sexual needs. The purpose of marriage, there's a long list of what marriage would not be for if you actually go through. What's he saying in this text? Because here's its purpose. He sets up Jesus as the model. Not primarily a model so you can have all your romantic and all your emotional happiness. He sets Jesus up as this model. Verse 26, so what is the home and marriage for? And he uses, and again, he's coming from Christ. Verse 26, to make her holy. Talking about Christ and the church and your own home. To make her holy, to sanctify her in verse 26. Verse 27, to present her in radiant beauty and splendor. Verse 27, to bring her to be perfectly holy and blameless. You read that through, and this is sacred stuff. This is glory stuff. This is becoming Christ-like stuff. You read this section, it's not that different from walking in Exodus 3 to the burning bush. You're standing on holy ground, and he's talking about marriage. He doesn't say, because you're starstruck and infatuated with a kid that's 2 years older than you. He doesn't say, because I don't like living by myself and I just want somebody to share life with me. He doesn't say, because I want to have kids and kind of got married to have kids, and I guess I can tolerate him if I need to. No, he gets into sacred stuff, holy stuff. I'm trying to reduce this down, but marriage is literally signing on with God to take a sacred journey with God. Because God has sons and daughters of His that He designed, God designed to be made in His image. And you're signing on with God to partner with God to help this man or woman to be conformed to the very image of God Himself, to be helped out of the brokenness of this world. So you partner with God and the Holy Spirit to help bring about the very sacredness that God has in another human being. Tim Keller has passed away now, but Tim Keller, he described marriage as this: it's two spiritual friends helping one another on their journey to become the people God designed them to be. So when Julie and I wake up in a bed together in the morning, or when we're doing something, I am not the center of this marriage, nor is she. But what God has from eternity designed this woman to be, at its core, my purpose for marriage has to understand, God, would you allow me the privilege of partnering with you to help bring about in her life what you've always been designing? Can I be a part of that process if you'll let me? So to evaluate, do I like my marriage? Does she make me happy today? Is to actually kidnap the very thing God designed. And it takes you down a road you don't want to go. Bad things happen going down that road. Now, don't misunderstand me. There is always a paradox with God. There's always an irony. But couldn't I be happy in my marriage? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You lose your life for my sake, you'll gain it back. This is this paradox. You'll be happier this way than you will that way. But let's make sure we keep it clear. If you don't know what your marriage is for, it'll break your own heart, you'll break your partner's heart because you misunderstood the covenant. Many of you know this, and so I won't take a long time on it, but covenant is a really, really important word. I'm not trying to play fancy here with some kind of technicality, but covenant really matters. If you don't understand it, it's covenant woven through all the Old Testament is whatever relationship God has will always be a covenant relationship. Marriage is not a contract with two people where he stands here and I promise to take good care of you the rest of your life, and she promises that I will take good care of you the rest of your life, and so they have a contract with each other. No, that won't work. Quite frankly, she takes him home and finds out he's not up here, he's really down here, and she's doing all these things for him, and he's only doing this much for her, and so, my goodness, in a contract, eventually, you kind of get your own medicine a little bit, and then he gets his, medicine, and you just begin to struggle with it. James chapter 3, we all stumble in many ways. If you have a contract, you're going to go home with a stumbler. And when you go home with a stumbler, quite frankly, you can define your marriage by your stumbling. This is his mood, so what else can I do? I tried to be cheerful for a while, but and so you walk it down. Covenant's different. Covenant is very different. Malachi, God calls a marriage his covenant marriage. Proverbs chapter 2, God calls a marriage a covenant. Best way I know to describe it is I use my son-in-law, Josh Marsh. Josh married our middle child, our first daughter, Katie. Josh is an engineer. They were dating for a little bit. They're not kids. He's got his engineering degree. He's been working with GE back in Pennsylvania. He's moved back in the area. Katie's a PA, does orthopedic surgeries. She's in town, and they're dating, and Josh wants to know if I have breakfast with him. Well, I knew what this was about. So we go to breakfast at a really high caliber place. We went to Shoney's for breakfast. And we're sitting there, and he asked for my blessing for him to ask Katie to marry him. And my answer is going to be yes, because Josh is a great guy, but I wasn't going to make it that easy for him. And so as we're sitting there, I just simply said, Josh, my answer is you're going to like my answer. But I said, Josh, can I tell you, here's what it's like for a dad sitting here. I said, you get this little girl, and you give her all the rides on the shoulders, and you sit beside her when she does the scales on the piano, and you shoot a gazillion baskets with her. And at its core, will she be safe with you, Josh? Will you take good care of her? And Josh put his hand out across the table and shook my hand with as much emotion as an engineer can have. And he said, Mr. Gariss, I give you my word. And there was more to what he said. He has more than kept his promise. We exchanged 12 sheep and a herd of goats. But anyhow, that's beside the point. It was a covenant. If I understand anything, here's how an actual marriage works. You didn't exchange vows with each other. Oh, the culture sort of has that, but that's not what you actually did, not from a heaven perspective. From a heaven perspective, he stood here and said things like, Heavenly Father, I love her, but life is complex, but Heavenly Father, I do know I love you. And God, would you give me the privilege of covenanting with you to be a man who gets to step in her life and accompany her the rest of her life as you do what you're going to do in her life? Would you use me as the raw material, consume me any way you want to consume me to take good care of this woman? To look after her as you want your daughter. Gary, well, there's any number of the guys who say this, but Gary Thomas said, I woke up one morning and realized God is my father-in-law. And he makes his covenant with God. And she stands here and says, Heavenly Father, I think I love him, but how do you know on these things? But Heavenly Father, I know I love you. Would you let me covenant with you to step into this man's life? May I partner with you? And the two go down the aisle together, and she married a stumbler, and he married a stumbler, and some weeks he's not doing well, and some weeks she's not doing as well, and everybody has seasons they're embarrassed about. But it didn't alter anything because God didn't change, and my covenant with God didn't alter. And humility and teachability caused me to come back and say, hon, I am so sorry. I'm not doing this well. Would you teach me better? And you go back to the Lord, and that consistency, the purpose of a marriage. And two things actually happen. And again, I'm going to let us take a break in about a minute and a half. Cutting out about 3 pages. Can I tell you two things that actually happen? Number one is it's impossible to overstate what the power of love does for transformation. People are transformed more by love than anything else. You can beat people, but you don't transform them. You can put routines together, but you can't transform them. You can set rules, but you can't transform them. Transformation. So the great transformation that God wants in Julie's life is they're just a man who will partner with God and love her because it's the most powerful thing to transform her life. But here's the flip side. The very act of loving is the most transformative thing in your life. So if he's actually going to make Randy holy, Julie can't serve Randy enough holiness. Randy's going to have transformation in his life, and that which will plow his own heart and bring the greatest transformation is to actually love somebody else. I've encountered more of God because of 1 John 4:12. Paraphrase, those who love will end up meeting their God. My own life was more transformed than I could ever transfer her life. It's transformative for both of us. There's a whole lot more we could do with that one, but those would be kind of the first two rocks that I would play. Does that make sense a little bit? You need a break. It's 11:08. Let's come back in about 8 to 10 minutes.